Bon Appetit Test Kitchen. We're talking about gourmet makes, it's alive, reverse engineering, back-to-back, and more. During Bon Appetit's peak era, they really were the go-to channel for some wholesome cooking content. Each cast member had their own quirks, personalities, and expertise. It was authentic, relatable, and also educational and fun. Seeing them all interact with each other on camera and be friends while also making cool food and doing challenges, it was just good vibes from all around of what we saw as viewers online. Emphasis on what we saw. But behind the scenes, things with the company were not so wholesome good vibes. Notably, in June 2020, Bon Appetit had a very rough month and months to follow. A lot of things came out around racism and inequality at the brand and its parent company, Condé Nast. A ton of their test kitchen stars that people had grown to know and love ended up stepping back or leaving altogether, and the Bon Appetit YouTube channel was just never the same. In this video, we're going to be covering what the Bon Appetit test kitchen once was, the downfall and injustices that were exposed, where everyone went and decided to go and do, and what has happened since then. I am in a different location today. I hope it's not too distracting. And with all that said, let's get into it. The Bon Appetit Test Kitchen is a professional kitchen and content hub operated by the Bon Appetit brand, which is a part of the global mass media company Condé Nast. Condé Nast is also responsible for brands like Vogue, GQ, Glamour, Vanity Fair, Architectural Digest, the list goes on. So Bon Appetit is just one of the long list of brands under them. And just so we're clear, the Bon Appetit Test Kitchen is still in existence as the Bon Appetit YouTube channel, but this video is going to be focusing specifically on the chefs and people involved during its peak around 2018 to early 2020. Mainly people like Claire, Brad, Chris, Molly, Carla, Christina, Andy, Alex, Rick, Gabby, Sola, Emil, and Priya. So yeah, we're gonna be covering quite a lot of people today. Bon Appetit's video revenue grew by 40% and digital subscriptions by 64% from 2018 to 2019. By mid-2019, Bon Appetit was averaging 1.5 million magazine subscriptions and nearly 50 million YouTube views per month. Some of their top shows on YouTube at the time were It's Alive with Brad, which was a series that initially focused on fermentation and recipes involving microbial cultures, before then expanding to visiting farms and food producers. Back to Back Chef with Carla, where she instructed celebrities on how to create different dishes while they faced back to back and thus couldn't really see what the other person was doing. Reverse Engineering with Chris, where he'd blindly taste test a dish and then reverse engineer it as closely to the original as he could. And Gourmet Makes with Claire, where she recreated and elevated iconic snack foods through some trial and error experimentation. And there were even more series than just that, and other content where other familiar faces would pop in and out, each sharing their own expertise and coming with their own backgrounds and personalities. The dynamics between everyone and the friendships among them built this overall comforting space. As a girl that grew up loving and watching Food Network, the Bon Appetit Test Kitchen in this era really felt like the new age online Food Network, where you would have all these chefs from shows that you love that you're constantly getting to see have these mini crossovers and interactions that just make everything more special. They'd even have some big collaborative videos like the BA Test Kitchen Makes the Perfect Thanksgiving Meal, where you just see a bunch of them working together and interacting, and it just felt like one big happy family. But behind the scenes, there was inequality and mistreatment of different groups that ultimately came to light around mid-2020. Before we get into the exact timelines of how everything unfolded, a brief overview is that Bon Appetit basically gets canceled after former and current employees come forward sharing their experiences of racism and inequality at the company. Also, I'm gonna be calling Bon Appetit BA at times in this video just to keep things more concise, so just telling you so you don't get confused. So not only do higher ups in the brand get exposed, but also some members of the test kitchen get exposed as well. And this all starts coming to light right when there was already so much racial tension in American media, since this went down right after George Floyd's murder on May 25th, 2020. On May 31st, the BA Instagram account shares their plans to address racial and political issues in the food world. They say that they stand in solidarity with George Floyd and that they'll be spotlighting more Black-owned food businesses. They say they'll be tackling more of the racial and political issues at the core of the food world, and they encourage followers to donate to organizations supporting racial justice. This then prompted people to start discussing BA's own diversity efforts as a brand. A few days later, on June 4th, Puerto Rican food writer writer Ileana Masonette calls them out. She calls them hypocrites for showing solidarity, while she had previously pitched a story to them about Afro-Puerto Ricans that make regional rice fritters that got rejected. She says the reason they told her they rejected it was because it sounded like a story that could have been told 5 years ago, and that BA then went on to publish another Euro ingredient story. Her posts about this have since been deleted. Her message essentially was saying that BA was only being performative with their post, which I totally see the point of. I feel like a ton of businesses only spoke out for selfish reasons, which let me know what you guys think about that, because I feel like it's good when businesses speak out, but I don't ever really trust their intentions behind it. In her deleted Instagram post, the editor-in-chief at the time for BA, Adam Rappaport, commented saying that they were actively working to bring new faces and POVs onto their staff, including the test kitchen, to ensure lasting change. They then continued conversation via direct messages on Instagram, which she also shared in tweets that have since been deleted. In those messages, Adam had told her that BA readers expected food stories about what's happening right now, though this was not always the case. Some exceptions have been made, and he brings up Rick's carnitas recipe, Priya's Indian recipes that she grew up with, and Andy's favorite Persian dishes, and that staff writers of color have had a simpler path to getting pitches approved than freelancers would. At the time, Ileana was not satisfied with those explanations, pointing out that Adam had just listed his POC staff token writers in an effort to defend BA's diversity claims. I do think that tokenization is a problem, and it is a problem that is going to be brought up by other POC writers at BA following all of this. Then just 4 days later, on June 8th, things get worse for Adam when a photo resurfaces on Twitter of him and his wife dressed as Puerto Rican stereotypes for Halloween, committing brownface. The original photo was taken in 2004, but it was reposted as a TBT in 2013. This opened up even more discussion around not only Adam's conduct at BA, but also how people of color were being treated by the brand overall. Many people started echoing the sentiment that he needed to resign. Several of the BA test kitchen employees reacted to the photo, saying that they couldn't be silent about it, it's disgusting, they're appalled and insulted, and saying that they stand up for the BIPOC employees and will help fight for change. Most notably, Assistant Food Director Sola opened up the conversation even wider by revealing the pay disparity between the white employees and employees of color. She revealed that she had not been compensated for any of her video appearances and was making significantly less than white contributors. She had been hired as an assistant editor to assist mostly white editors with significantly less experience for an annual salary of $50,000 and had been pushed in front of the video as a display of diversity, which, like, $50,000 in New York City is quite hard to get by with. Also, considering the impact that the test kitchen stars had on BA's success, she totally deserved more in my opinion. Also, her mentioning how she was put on camera for showing diversity kind of reminded me of our BuzzFeed video where Kristen and Jen spoke about their experiences also feeling used in that way. After Sola, more employees like Molly and Carla came forward to support her by refusing to contribute to more BA videos until BIPOC colleagues received equal pay and were fairly compensated. Condé Nast did respond to this by telling Variety that it was untrue that BA white editors are paid for appearing in videos while people of color are not, and a spokesperson told Insider that the company was, quote, dedicated to creating a diverse, inclusive, and equitable workplace. Later that same evening that all of this is going down, Adam does resign as editor-in-chief after spending 10 years with the company. He called the Halloween costumes in the photo extremely ill-conceived, and he had not championed an inclusive vision at BA. He supports the work being done to evolve the brand in a positive and more diverse direction, and he's just not the one to lead the work. And he apologizes for his failings in the position that he put the editors of BA in. Claire and Brad also share their reactions and thoughts to all of this news. Claire notably says that she has already been done working at BA since her contract had ended prior to all of this coming out, and Brad posts saying that he's supporting all of his BIPOC colleagues. But things continue to pile on. The following day, on June 9th, BA editor Alex gets heat for a resurfaced photo of a Confederate flag cake. He made the cake back in 2010, and someone reposted it onto Twitter amidst all of this conversation going on. In his original blog post with the cake, he said he had made it because his best friend was moving to South Carolina. He had said, "To honor her new home, my friends and I felt the need to express some Southern heritage in cake form. Such a glorious cake for such a sad occasion." He then addresses this on an Instagram story, saying that the photo was pulled from his Tumblr when he was 17. He says it's a despicable symbol that a 17-year-old should understand, and it doesn't reflect his values now. He condemns whoever uses or glorifies the flag. It's shameful, and he apologizes. He said he would donate his next paycheck to the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Foundation Fund. That same day, a Vine video clip from 2013 where he's heard using the F-word homophobic slur also circulated on social media. Also that same day, offensive tweets from a VP at Condé Nast who previously oversaw BA video content came out. The man's name is Matt Ducker. In the tweets, he said things like working out is so gay and joked about there being black people and Asian same-sex couples in the Harlem neighborhood of Manhattan. He then apologized for these tweets and said that they were over 10 years old. He thought that he was making a joke at the time, but even his 20-year-old self should have seen that it wasn't funny. He says that he's ashamed and he realizes that it casts doubt on his present-day values and weakens the voice behind his calls of systematic change and inclusivity for BIPOC and LGBTQ+ employees. So he also ends up resigning from this. And y'all, we are still on June 9th. This is like the longest day it seems for all of this information coming out at once. But Business Insider releases an article that had actually been in the works even before all of this came to light. The article had compiled information on BA after interviewing 14 former and current employees and contributors. They described the environment as toxic for people of color. They felt non-white employees were socially and professionally slighted and that they were treated as second class. So about Adam, the editor-in-chief that resigned, his previous assistant was a black woman named Ryan. The article said that she had been working for him for 2 years and 9 months at that point and called him to explain why she thought she deserved a raise or at least a 2-week vacation. Her annual base salary before overtime was $35,300 and she had never received a pay increase during her time working for him. Aside from her normal work for him, she had also done things like clean his golf clubs, pick up his son's passport, and teach his wife how to use Google Calendar. She said that he was also aware that she hadn't been able to pay her rent for the last 3 months. In response to asking for a potential raise, he told her, well, maybe you should consider that this is not the right job for you. This will happen just days after the whole food is inherently political post on BA's account and Condé Nast donating $1 million to racial justice organizations after George Floyd's murder. So the company is going to preach about these things in public and how they support people of color, but their actual people of color employees and workers are not even getting paid livable wages. The article explained that there were different ways that people got paid for their work at BA. Some people would have contracts with Condé Nast Entertainment for their specific shows. Some of them, like Claire, were freelancers, and others like Molly were editors at BA that received additional income through Condé Nast Entertainment. Others would be in videos only when asked, and they wouldn't get paid extra for that additional time spent. Sola was in that group. She got a base pay to do her main job, which was testing and developing recipes, but then she was also put on camera for some videos that she wouldn't get any additional pay for. Priya had expressed how weird it was to be perceived as one big happy family to the media, when behind the scenes they were all being unequally compensated, and there was an implicit understanding that the white talent was more valuable than the non-white counterparts. Sola said that there was a big difference in how they monetarily valued white employees versus people of color. She had asked Adam for on-air contracts on numerous occasions, and each time she was told that she couldn't get one or that the contracts were tied up with the legal department. They were only able to get her a contract after she made her public statement about things. Literally just 1 hour after her Instagram post, she said that she got a contract that would add $20,000 to her base pay. She felt insulted at that offer since allegedly other stars earn much more over time with per episode fees. It is pretty sus. Like, you could say that this wasn't racially motivated and the pay disparity was due to other reasons, but the fact that they only gave her the contract to increase her pay after all of this was coming out, as if in an effort to silence her, I feel like that speaks volumes. Also, there is an argument that a lot of pay gaps come from groups of people being more empowered to ask for more and others being more quiet and not advocating for themselves. But in this case, Sola says that she's been advocating for herself and asking for more and was consistently denied. A representative from Condé Nast said that it's not true to say that any employee is not paid for their work, and that as a global media company, they're dedicated to creating a diverse, inclusive, and equitable workplace. They have a zero-tolerance policy towards discrimination and harassment in all forms, and they go to great lengths to ensure that employees are paid fairly in accordance with their roles and experience across the company. Now we're on June 10th, and pause real quick. Can you believe that all of this is happening and it's only been 2 days at this point since the brown face photo came out on Twitter? On this day, BA senior food editor Andy responds to Alex's offensive Vine with a homophobic slur, only for himself to then be called out for problematic behavior. In Andy's post, he says that Alex's clip was hurtful and triggering and that he's reached out to queer colleagues at BA to discuss the video, and Alex will have to respond to it. But he gets called out for allegedly attempting to cut multiple projects by a female Korean American colleague named Elise. In In a series of now deleted tweets, Elise says that Andy tried to shelve her profile of Antoni Prowski. He's one of the guys on Queer Eye that's expertise is on food and wine. Allegedly, Andy didn't want that profile because of his own petty feelings towards Antoni. She said that Andy used his popularity to sway editorial decisions and undercut her work. He never spoke to her directly and that he would just try to get her story killed. Both times that it happened, she cried at her desk about it. Her tweets around this have since been deleted, and Andy does kind of respond to the story, which we'll see later. And BA has published 2 articles by Elise about Antoni, so I'm not sure, but these could be the ones that she was referencing. That same day, BA posts a long overdue apology and where we go from here. They say that they've been complicit with a culture that they don't agree with and that they're committed to change. They admit to have treated non-white stories as not newsworthy or trendy, or at times have co-opted and appropriated them. They take accountability for tokenizing BIPOC staffers and contributors. They even say that moving forward, they're going to resolve any pay inequities that are found across all departments. The apology didn't come off as genuine to a lot of people online. I mean, I feel like with any apology, you're only ever going to see how genuine it really was after time goes on. But in general, I'm not very sympathetic when it comes to big brands and businesses apologizing. Maybe I'm too cynical, but I don't think any of these corporations truly care about being better. They're just in it to save themselves so that they continue with business as usual and keep making money. People also found the words to be fake since around the same time, BA had suspended a video editor named Matt as he was pending investigation by the company. Netizens started guessing that Matt had been punished for speaking out against the company's practices earlier that month on social media, and the rumors were fueled by 3 Condé Nast and BA employees telling Business Insider that that's essentially what they thought too. He did end up being unsuspended in August and continued to work at BA until 2022, which we'll get into a bit later when we talk about what happened to Christina after BA, because Christina and Matt are together IRL. So then, speaking of Christina, she also comes out to accuse BA of pay inequity. In an Instagram story, she says that she was not paid for her appearances in videos either, backing up Sola's claims that Condé Nast was denying. She also said that she didn't receive a promotion or any raises in her 3 years working at BA. Condé Nast told Business Insider in response to these additional claims that it is, quote, simply not true to suggest that employees are not compensated for their video work. As full-time employees, they are paid a salary and receive benefits. So I think the point that BA and Condé Nast is making is like, hey, you're paid for that video because you're paid in these other ways, but Christina and Sola are arguing that the video work is outside of their core work, that they have their base salaries for, and that they don't explicitly get paid for the video work, while some people are, and that's not fair. Again, I might be cynical, but I think any company is going to try and underpay and undercut and just undervalue you. And sure, maybe Condé Nast and BA really thought that the system and process that they had in place was fair and non-discriminatory, but regardless, I think that they really played themselves because they didn't realize how important these people were to the brand. These test kitchen staffers knew their worth. Even if you take away the racial aspect of it, which me as an individual with no insider knowledge of the pay structures of their staff, I'm not here to definitively say that they were or weren't doing XYZ. I'm just sharing what people have said online and what the company has said in response. What I see is a big greedy corporation that underestimated the power and influence that their staffers had over the success of their brand. You found great talent, so just pay them a good wage to keep them. But of course, big corporations will never acknowledge the true worth of individuals, so at worst, they're intentionally racist, and at best, they're just another greedy corporation. After all this happens, Claire posts on Instagram talking about how she was aware of some of the toxic environment, but also missed a lot, and she's trying to take accountability for her complicitness in the system. She says that she didn't ask questions about compensation around people that she invited to appear in her Gourmet Makes videos. She says that she feels shitty about her actions, but her feelings aren't the priority, and she wants to focus on how she can repair things, and that she wants to show up for people that she deeply respects. Andy also posts about this controversy again, apologizing for being too focused on his own career to properly elevate the voices of his BIPOC coworkers. He also gave some context on his pay for videos. He said that at the start there weren't any talks about contracts for receiving additional pay for video appearances, but that he was able to more recently secure a contract after months of negotiation to start getting paid for them. He also said he had conversations with a former coworker that he didn't name and had taken full responsibility for his behavior that undermined their work, which people guess is in reference to Elise's tweets about the Antoni articles. On July 2nd, Business Insider released another article reporting that current and former employees said that there was a scale check process at BA that they used to evaluate video pitches against historical data, and that this check often led to the rejection of Black celebrities like Lizzo and Megan Thee Stallion for for video appearances. 13 current and former employees said that this process led to the rejection of pitches that were focused on non-white communities, and some employees said that it also made chefs of color often get sidelined in largely uncompensated video appearances, whereas white coworkers would get the high-paying gigs. The month of July was mostly silent, but then come August, the test kitchen stars start dipping. Priya, Rick, and Sola all officially announced on the same day that they were not going to appear in BA videos anymore. Priya and Rick told Business Insider that after 5 weeks of contract negotiations, they were offered contracts that would result in a pay cut for Rick and a slight bump for Priya, but ultimately would still leave them being paid less than their white counterparts. Rick said, "With this company, it's just mind-boggling. The only thing I can work out in my head is that the sanctity of the institution is more important than some of the people who work there." The next day, Molly announces that she's no longer going to appear in BA videos either. On Twitter, she said, "I'm sad, I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated along with all of you. Yesterday, we lost 3 valuable members of our video team. I support their decisions unequivocally and am extremely disheartened that Condé Nast Entertainment was unable to provide them contracts that they feel were fair and equitable." She says that she's no longer going to appear in videos, but will continue working on the BA magazine's editorial side, which is something that a lot of them end up doing, but don't always make super clear. But just to clarify, some of these BA test kitchen stars were freelance contract employees with BA, and after the controversy, they decided to not appear in BA videos anymore, but still continued to do work with BA on other things like writing articles and contributing to recipe development, etc. Or they had been working for BA previously with a different title, but they had separate contracts for video appearances, and they just chose to end the video side of things. Which you could critique and be like, oh, why work for them at all if you really don't condone their actions? But I have grace for these people because they're trying to make a living. Like, mind you, it's 2020 peak COVID lockdowns when this is happening, and I do think it's different to choose to appear in videos with your name and your persona, since you're kind of aligning your personal brand to the corporation versus continuing to work in less personal roles. The day after that, test kitchen manager Gabby announces that she's not going to appear in videos anymore either, also saying that after weeks of negotiations, she didn't feel like Condé Nast met her expectations regarding their promises to create a more diverse and inclusive video program that they were saying they were gonna create. But at this point, she still continued to be working as test kitchen manager, which again, who's gonna blame her? It makes sense. If BA is gonna profit off of all of these stars' likeness, then they better get paid accordingly, and I guess after all of these negotiations, they were not gonna be. Also in August, Alex posts a more lengthy apology on Instagram addressing the racist and homophobic posts that he got outed for earlier that we talked about, like the cake and the vine. He addresses his privilege and the work that he still has to do better. He stays working at BA but doesn't really appear in many videos after this year. Then Carla announces that she's also leaving BA on Twitter. She says that while she's been supported and rewarded for her work, her BIPOC co-hosts were not. And there's just no way she can go back to video amid all of these failures. She says that she will continue to serve as an editor and fight internally. Emil also announces that he's no longer appearing in videos with an Instagram post. He does stay as a contributor to the magazine and website to this day. He mostly works on the Basically section of the print magazine and helps to report BA's annual Best New Restaurants package. And outside of it, he's also a culinary director for the restaurant Moonburger. So August was a wild month in terms of I'm leaving BA video announcements. I also want to note that I might have missed statements made from some of the test kitchen stars. I didn't see screenshots of this story, but I did see people online say that Chris also made a post condemning Adam's brown face. And just because I don't mention someone doesn't mean that they definitely didn't say anything. I'm just one girl doing my best to compile what I could find online. Also in August, BA announced their new editor-in-chief, Dawn Davis. She does end up resigning in 2023, but we're just in 2020 right now. That's not the topic of this video. Come October, Claire announced on Instagram that she's no longer gonna appear on BA video either. Her formal contract had ended already in May, like we said earlier, but she made this announcement, I guess, to definitively tell people that it's really over and she's not gonna renew it. So at this point, in terms of appearing in BA videos, it's really mostly just Brad, Chris, and Andy with their respective series, which again doesn't mean that all of the other test kitchen stars stopped working with BA completely at this point. It just meant that they weren't appearing in videos at all or as often. On October 13th, BA announces 8 new chefs that are joining the YouTube channel. There's a video that's unlisted now on the BA channel that announced them all, and ever since then, the channel has continued on with posting. Andy does leave the channel in August 2021, which we'll get into when we get into where everyone else is now. There was a controversy with Brad's It's Alive series where people were saying that he endorsed unsafe safe food techniques, like when canning seafood. I know absolutely nothing when it comes to food safety, but apparently in this video, he showed a canning technique called the water bath canning method. People who are actually food safety experts in this said that the technique is super dangerous to promote because it could give people botulism. Apparently, there were some ways to make the water bath canning method work, but they didn't properly showcase all the steps in the video. And just in general, it's not a safe technique to be promoted. BA does end up apologizing for the video on their YouTube community tab and removing the video from their channel. However, the year following in 2022, Brad gets under fire again for another It's Alive episode, but this time with pastrami. In the video, there was a recipe that included using celery juice as a substitute for curing salt and introducing sauerkraut liquid for its microbes. Again, people who are smarter than me with this food safety stuff said that this method could also lead to botulism or other foodborne illnesses. So yeah, not really looking too good. And the video is still up. They never made a statement to address anything. They just included a disclaimer in the video description. Brad ended up leaving the BA channel later that year in December, but it was probably unrelated to this backlash. And Chris is still in it as of 2025. Bro is the last man standing for real, the only OG BA Test Kitchen star to still be in BA videos. Chris's official title is Test Kitchen Director at BA. He still does his reverse engineering series along with other video appearances. He's also the host of the BA podcast Dinner SOS that started in November 2022 and is still active, which is pretty impressive. So what has happened to everyone else since leaving BA? Quick disclaimer, there are a ton of these people and they're all doing so many things, so I apologize if I missed anything big, but just please let me know in the comments if there is something. Everyone is pretty booked and busy. There's a lot of things to cover, which is a good thing for them, but let's just get into it. So like we covered earlier, Andy left his senior food editor role at BA in August 2021. He's now a freelance recipe developer and released his first cookbook that was a New York Times bestseller called The Cook You Want to Be. And side note, a lot of the BA Test Kitchen stars are now New York Times bestselling authors, so that's going to be a repeated pattern. Andy's cookbook also won a James Beard Award in 2023, which if you didn't know, getting a James Beard Award is one of the most prestigious honors in the American culinary world. Alex had left his role as a drinks editor in February 2021, but he still worked as a freelance contributor to BA for some time. He's now a freelance food and beverage consultant and also a DJ. He created some free guides called Everything Good in New York City, which is basically a huge Google document with a list of good restaurants or bars or different kind of spots. Shortly after Molly announced ending her video contract with BA, she also left her staff position in October 2020. She's written multiple New York Times bestselling cookbooks, one titled Cook This Book and another titled More is More, Get Loose in the Kitchen, a cookbook. She's since started an online recipe club called The Club, where subscribers get access to weekly new recipes and exclusive content. She also had launched a podcast called The Sandwich Universe, but it's no longer active. She started her own YouTube channel that has 145,000 subscribers. She launched a flavored mayonnaise brand called Ayo, which I think is a really cute name. She also co-founded a wine brand called Drink This Wine. She also has had many brand deals and collaborations, like one with Great Jones, which brand deals and collaborations are another thing that's going to be a recurring theme amongst the BA Test Kitchen stars. Unfortunately, Molly's home was affected in the LA fires earlier this year in January, but she's recently had a Vogue article written about how she found solace in some lentil soup and how she's been able to move forward and start fresh. Christina stayed as a senior food editor at BA until September 2022. Her last day post was actually on the same day that the Condé Nast Union was officially recognized, which just earlier that year she had announced the formation of on her Instagram as well. I mentioned her partner Matt earlier, the editor that got suspended allegedly for speaking out against BA and Condé Nast on social media, but then got unsuspended a little bit over a month after. Well, he also left around the same time as Christina. Christina now has a newsletter called Gentle Foods on Substack and also a mini cookbook called Souplit. She has a full cookbook set to come out sometime in 2026. Priya had cut ties with BA in August 2020, and she's now a food reporter for the New York Times and a New York Times bestselling cookbook author. One of her cookbooks called Indian-ish was released while she was still at BA. Another one she co-wrote with David Chang called Cooking at Home. She also wrote an illustrated cookbook for kids and their parents called Priya's Kitchen Adventures, a cookbook for kids. She's the host of the New York Times cooking channel series On the Job, where she meets and features different people in the food industry. It's a pretty interesting and insightful series. It's showed up on my homepage a couple times and has really gotten me, even though I don't really watch food content on YouTube as much as I used to. And she's still featured on the New York Times cooking channel here and there. In 2022, 2022, she was on an episode of Selena and Chef. She's been a guest judge on MasterChef, and there was a pretty iconic gingerbread house series that was on the New York Times cooking channel with her partner Seth, and Sola and her partner Ham. In 2022, they worked together to make a Home Alone gingerbread house, and I don't think they've done one since then, but it was a very cute series. Speaking of Sola, she also left after all of this drama in 2020. She continued being a huge star on YouTube, appearing in several successful series across different channels like the New York Times Cooking Gingerbread Houses and Mystery Menu with Ham, Stump Sola on the Babish Culinary Universe channel where she cooked food under various challenges, Off the Script with Sola on Food 52, and Ancient Recipes on the History Channel. She's done brand deals like HBO Game of Thrones, Weber Grills, a Madewell collab, seasonings that she released with Ham. Girly has done so much. She also has a newsletter on Substack. She wrote a cookbook called Start Here: Instructions for Becoming a Better Cook, which was also a New York Times bestseller and James Beard Award winner. And she was a judge on the HBO Max cooking competition show, The Big Brunch. Carla had ended her video contract with BA in August 2020 and ended her editorial position later that December. She's since published cookbooks like Where Cooking Begins, which also won a James Beard Award, and Sounds So Good, which was a New York Times bestseller. She has a YouTube channel with over 232,000 subscribers. She's active on Instagram and has a weekly newsletter to share new recipes. She had a podcast called Borderline Salty that she co-hosted with Rick, but unfortunately isn't active anymore. She also had a series with Molly called You Got Snacked, where they cook snacks. And she's also gotten some great brand deals, like one with West Elm. Like, I'm here for it, you guys. These people stay booked and busy for real. She recently announced being a host of a new podcast called Sweets Unwrapped, where she talks about people's favorite sweets and how they're made. Rick also left BA Video in 2020. He now stars in various online video series on YouTube, like he had one called Pruebalo on the Babish Culinary Universe channel. Forgive me for butchering pronunciations, which I'm sure happens a lot on this channel. In that series, he would cook Mexican dishes while traveling around Mexico and interviewing different people. He also had two series on Food 52's YouTube channel, one called Mi Cocina, which focused on highlighting different Mexican food classics inspired by his cookbook, Mi Cocina, and also the series Sweet Heat, where he showcased different recipes built around combining sweet and spicy flavors. His cookbook, Mi Cocina, was also a New York Times bestseller and also won a James Beard Award. It's kind of crazy how stacked all of these test kitchen stars are with awards. He also has another cookbook called Salsa Daddy, a cookbook dip your way into Mexican cooking, that just came out this year that he's gonna go on a book tour for. And he's still very active on his various social media accounts. Like we mentioned earlier, Brad continued as a test kitchen video host until December 2022. Since then, he's worked on his own YouTube channel with 344,000 subscribers. He's had different brand partnerships, like one with Huckberry for clothing, and also a series called Ramble On with Brad Leone. He's also done collabs for knives and spatulas, a cereal bowl. I mean, get that bag. He's also a New York Times bestselling author for a cookbook called Field Notes for Food Adventure, Recipes and Stories from the Woods to the Ocean, which is a long title, but that came out while he was still working at BA. He also appeared as a guest character in the Cartoon Network show Craig of the Creek. Gabby left BA Video in August 2020 and then left her role as test kitchen manager just a few months after in November. She now has a YouTube channel with 75,000 subscribers, although it's not super active anymore. She's more active on Instagram with short form content where she has over 233,000 followers, and she recently announced that she's going to be streaming on Twitch. She's written a memoir called Food Related Stories where she talks about her culinary career and how food has been present in all of her different battles. She has also written a children's cookbook of Latin foods called Gabby's Latin American Kitchen, which includes recipes from her childhood and things that she learned after she came to the US. She also hosts teen summer camp cooking classes, which I saw on her website, which I thought was really wholesome and cute. And she has a newsletter where she shares daily ideas and recipes. Claire, like we mentioned earlier, decided not to renew her contract and continue relations with BA Video after it ended in May 2020. She has published two New York Times bestselling cookbooks, one called Dessert Person and another called What's for Dessert. She has her own YouTube channel with 1.4 million subscribers, which I think is the most successful independent YouTube channel to come from the Test Kitchen stars. In April 2024, she started a series on her YouTube channel called Claire Recreates, which is pretty much the successor to Gourmet Makes, where she's again recreating classic treats. I really love watching her series, even when she roasts things that I don't believe deserve getting roasted. did, like Cosmic Brownies, I will defend those till the day I die. So without almost all of their OG test kitchen stars, the BA YouTube channel continued making content with new faces. The channel never died. I mean, they're still getting hundreds of thousands of views per video. It's just a decrease when you compare it to the channel's peak era. Like, the most popular videos on the channel today are still mostly ones from the peak era, a ton of them being Claire's Gourmet Makes videos. To be honest, I don't really watch that type of cooking content style anymore, so I'm not up to date with all of the new faces on the channel. Absolutely no shade meant to any of them, I'm just not in tune. As mentioned earlier, the Condé Nast Union was recognized as of September 2022, so hopefully that means that there's better systems in place to advocate for fair treatment of all the workers under their various brands, including BA. There was a controversy earlier this year where a popular food influencer named Meredith Hayden accused BA of copying her dinner party video series concept. Meredith runs her own YouTube channel under the name Wishbone Kitchen and has had a Dinner with Friends video series on it since January 2024. The show is her inviting guests, preparing seasonal meals, and providing hosting tips. In February 2025, BA announced a new series that was also called Dinner with Friends that centered around dinner parties and giving tips, hosted by editor Kendra Vaculin. Meredith made a TikTok expressing her frustration with it. She acknowledged that the phrase Dinner with Friends isn't unique, but BA should have done some research to avoid having a duplicate title, and said that even her red and pink color scheme for the branding seemed to be copied. She also mentioned how BA had rejected her on previous collaborations, which made them doing this even more discouraging. She called them to change their series name and their branding to fix it if it was really an honest mistake. A lot of netizens rallied behind her and started flooding BA's comment section in the post-announcement of this series with criticism, but there were also some people who felt like the phrase was pretty generic and she had no legal rights to the name. In fact, some people dug up that someone else had actually trademarked it previously, and after looking into what the BA series was, it didn't actually seem to be in that competition to Meredith's series, since BA's Dinner with Friends was not going to be a video series. BA did respond to the backlash with a pinned comment on their Instagram post saying that Dinner with Friends is a common phrase and we believe there's room for multiple ways to engage with it. Which, like, dang, that's a really an F off to the haters type of response. I'm surprised that they went with that. I couldn't really confirm what exactly BA series ended up being because I don't subscribe to their magazine, so I don't have access to all of their different series online. But I can confirm that there was nothing that comes up on YouTube as a video series by them titled Dinner with Friends. I suspect that they might have renamed the series to Dinner is Served because I noticed that the girlie that they said was going to be leading the series, Kendra, is on the Bon Appetit website with credit for her monthly column Speedy Does It and overseeing the Dinner is Served section of the magazine, with no mention to Dinner with Friends in her bio. So it does seem like they might have done this to appease Meredith's asks after all of this backlash. So after all of this, the big takeaway for me is that if big corporations want to invest in YouTube channels, they really need to start valuing their people. The people are their stars. Their people don't just physically create the content, they make or break the content. With YouTubers, you feel that connection. It's way easier to vibe with a real person than to get excited about a business. That's why so many of us loved watching the Bon Appetit channel, even though it was actually owned by a big corporation. It still didn't feel very corporate, especially if you were just watching the YouTube videos and you didn't really know about Condé Nast running the show. After all the drama and scandals, that illusion just got totally shattered. Sure, the BA channel is still putting out great high quality videos, and I'm sure there are awesome people working there, but once you see behind the curtain, it kind of changes things for good. The magic isn't so easy to get back now that everyone's more aware of what's really going on behind the scenes. Viewers are way more likely to follow the actual people that they connect with rather than just sticking around to watch the same YouTube channel. And with all of that, we've made it to the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for making it this far. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you have any requests for other videos, please like and subscribe to support the channel, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!